Have you ever walked into a cozy little cafe, only to feel an icy chill run down your spine? The UK is filled with charming coffee shops, but some of them hide a much darker secret. From footsteps echoing in empty hallways, to whispers that brush against your ear when no one's there, these are places where history refuses to stay silent. Today, we're stepping inside 5 real haunted coffee shops where customers didn't just find caffeine, they found ghosts. Stay with me, because once you hear these encounters, you may never sip coffee the same way again. If you love exploring haunted and abandoned places with me, don't forget to subscribe, your support keeps these stories alive. 1 Carbrook Hall Starbucks, Sheffield. It was a crisp autumn evening when I first stepped into Carbrook Hall, now a Starbucks, in Sheffield. The building, dating back to the 12th century, had always intrigued me. Once a meeting place during the Civil War, it had transformed into a public house and, eventually, a coffee shop. Yet, its haunted reputation lingered. As I entered, the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the musty scent of aged wood. The oak room, with its intricate wood paneling and stone fireplace, exuded an eerie charm. I ordered a cappuccino and settled into a corner, my notebook ready. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of the espresso machine. But then, a sudden chill swept through the air. I glanced around, but no one had entered. The temperature drop was unmistakable. I dismissed it as a draft, but the unease lingered. Minutes later, a soft whisper echoed from the far corner. "The siege," it seemed to say. My heart raced. I knew the history. Carbrook Hall had been a strategic location during the siege of Sheffield Castle. Could it be a spirit trying to communicate? I stood and approached the corner, my footsteps muffled on the wooden floor. The whispering ceased, replaced by a faint giggle. I froze. The sound was unmistakable, children's laughter. Yet, the room remained empty. Suddenly, a bag of coffee beans toppled from a shelf, spilling its contents onto the floor. I jumped back, startled. No one had been near the shelf. The room felt charged, as if unseen eyes were watching. I returned to my seat, trying to steady my nerves. The oak room had always been the epicenter of paranormal activity here. Staff had reported similar experiences, doors opening by themselves, objects moving without cause, and the unsettling sounds of children playing when no one was around. As I sipped my coffee, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The spirits of Carbrook Hall seemed to linger, their presence palpable. Whether they were remnants of the past or entities tied to the building, I couldn't say. But one thing was certain, Carbrook Hall was more than just a coffee shop. It was a bridge between the living and the dead. 2 The Jamaica Inn Coffee Lounge, Cornwall. I'll never forget the first time I stepped into the Jamaica Inn Coffee Lounge. It was late afternoon in Cornwall, the kind of day when the sky hung low with mist, and the air smelled faintly of wet earth and distant sea spray. I had read plenty about the inn's haunted reputation, but a part of me didn't believe it. Ghost stories always felt like exaggerations, a way for old places to attract tourists. Still, curiosity has a way of pulling you in, even when logic warns you otherwise. As soon as I pushed open the heavy wooden door, a rush of warmth hit me. The smell of roasted coffee beans mixed with something older, aged wood, maybe, or the faint musk of history clinging to the beams. The lounge itself was dimly lit, the kind of dimness that feels intentional, with low-hanging lights casting golden pools across the tables. There was a quiet murmur of voices, the clink of cups against saucers, and the occasional creak of floorboards that felt too sharp, too isolated, like the building was reminding everyone of its age. I took a seat in the corner, half hidden by a wooden partition. From there, I had a clear view of the stone fireplace. The flames inside crackled faintly, giving off a warmth that didn't seem to reach the far ends of the room. I remember thinking how cozy it was, how ordinary, and how maybe the whole haunted reputation was just a myth built from smuggler legends and stormy nights. But then, things started to shift. At first, it was subtle. The sound of boots crossing the floor, heavy and deliberate, though no one passed by. The rhythm was distinct, like someone pacing, and when I leaned out from my corner, the space was empty. My chest tightened, and I laughed under my breath, telling myself it must have been the old board settling. But even as I tried to sip my coffee, my ears caught it again: step, pause, step, pause. The sound circled me like a predator just out of sight. The air grew colder. Not the kind of chill you notice when someone opens a door, but sharp and sudden, enough to make the hairs on my arms stand on end. I wrapped my hands tighter around the mug, staring into the steam as if it could anchor me. That's when I saw it, the shadow. Across the lounge, near the hallway that leads deeper into the inn, a figure stood for just a second. Tall, dark, featureless. My heart slammed against my ribs. I blinked, and it was gone. No footsteps, no movement. Just empty space where a man had been. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light, maybe someone passing quickly, but the silence in the room said otherwise. Even the conversations around me seemed to hush, like everyone was holding their breath. I thought about leaving. Every instinct screamed for me to get up, to push past the door and step into the safety of daylight. But my legs felt heavy, rooted to the spot by some mix of fear and fascination. I told myself I would stay until my cup was empty. That was the deal. Then came the whisper. Low, drawn out, as if the walls themselves were trying to speak. It brushed against my ear, though no one was near me. I couldn't make out words, just the tone, a hushed urgency that sent a shiver racing down my spine. My throat tightened, my skin crawled, and for the first time I understood why so many people leave this place saying they felt something. When I finally forced myself to stand, the floor creaked beneath me in protest. I placed my cup back on the table with shaking hands, whispering a quick thank you to no one in particular, as if politeness might keep me safe. As I stepped outside, the mist seemed thicker than before, curling around the inn like a living thing. Looking back at the building, I knew what I had experienced wasn't imagination. The Jamaica Inn Coffee Lounge carries something with it, something old, something restless. And though fear pressed down on me with every step away, a small part of me already wanted to return. Not for comfort, but for answers. 3. The Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Center Café, Hinckley, Leicestershire. I didn't expect a simple cafe visit to leave me questioning what's real and what isn't. I had heard about the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Center in Hinckley before. It's known as one of the strangest places in England, filled with old objects that are said to carry attachments. The idea that antiques could hold memories, or even spirits, felt like something out of a late-night documentary. Still, curiosity won. One rainy afternoon, I found myself walking through its doors. The air inside felt different immediately. It wasn't just the smell of old wood and dust, there was a heaviness, like the atmosphere itself pressed against my chest. The cafe area was small but inviting, with mismatched chairs, dim lamps, and a faint aroma of brewed tea and coffee. It should have felt cozy, but there was an edge to it, like the room had seen too much. I ordered a simple black coffee and sat by the corner table, my back against the wall. From there, I had a good view of the cafe and the antiques scattered around. Old dolls with cracked porcelain faces, tarnished mirrors leaning against the walls, faded photographs framed in heavy wood. Each object seemed to hum with its own quiet story, and I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched, not by the people in the cafe, but by the things inside it. At first, it was easy to dismiss the feeling. I busied myself with my coffee, listening to the low chatter of two women at a nearby table and the occasional clink of cups. But then the temperature dipped. It wasn't gradual, it was sudden, like stepping into a cellar. My breath fogged slightly, and the warmth of my coffee felt like the only real heat left in the room. That's when I heard it, footsteps above me. Slow, dragging, deliberate. I looked toward the ceiling, half expecting someone to walk down the stairs, but no one came. The staff member behind the counter noticed me staring and gave a small smile, almost as if to say, "You're not the first to hear them." I tried to shake it off, but the unease clung to me. Out of the corner of my eye, one of the antique mirrors caught my attention. It stood tall, its surface slightly warped with age. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw movement in it, a shadow shifting across the glass, even though no one was standing there. My stomach tightened. I blinked, leaned closer, and it was gone. Just my reflection, pale and tense. The real breaking point came with the whisper. I was sitting alone, no one near me, when a voice brushed past my ear. It was faint, almost a hiss, and I couldn't make out the words, but the tone carried urgency, like someone trying to warn me. I spun around, my chair scraping loudly against the floor, but the space was empty. The women nearby were still deep in their own conversation, oblivious. Fear hit me then, not the kind that makes you scream, but the kind that freezes you in place. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I thought about leaving, but my legs felt stiff, heavy. Instead, I gripped the table edge and waited for the rush of adrenaline to fade. It didn't. When I finally stood, the floorboards groaned beneath my feet, echoing louder than they should have. I left my half-finished coffee behind and moved quickly toward the door. Just before stepping outside, I glanced back. One of the dolls on the shelf, its head tilted, eyes glassy and unblinking, seemed to be facing a different direction than when I first entered. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air felt no lighter. I walked away with my chest tight, my mind replaying every sound and shadow. I had gone in thinking it was just a cafe with a gimmick, a clever way to make antiques seem interesting. But what I experienced inside told me otherwise. The Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Center Cafe doesn't just serve coffee, it serves encounters. And whether those whispers were real or not, I can't shake the feeling that something there followed me out. For the Skirrid Mountain in Coffee Lounge, Abergavenny, Wales. I had always heard whispers about the Skirrid Mountain Inn, that it was one of the oldest pubs in Wales and certainly one of the most haunted. But stepping into its coffee lounge on a drizzly morning felt less like walking into a pub and more like stepping into a piece of history that hadn't entirely let go of its ghosts. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air felt heavier. Not just thick with the smell of wood smoke and damp stone, but heavy, like the walls themselves carried centuries of secrets. The lounge was dim, even though daylight pushed faintly through the old windows. Shadows pooled in the corners. The wooden beams above, dark with age, seemed to sag under the weight of time. I ordered a coffee and found a seat near the window, hoping the outside view of the rolling hills would keep me grounded. The coffee was hot and strong, its steam curling up like breath in the cold air. I noticed how quiet it was, too quiet. Even the few other visitors spoke in low voices, as though raising them would disturb something unseen. At first, I let myself relax. I studied the room, old oak tables, a grandfather clock ticking faintly, and framed sketches of judges and hangmen on the walls. That's when my eyes caught on the beam above. I'd read that this was once a place of execution, that over 180 men had been hanged from that very wood. The thought made my stomach churn, and for the first time I wondered if sitting directly under it was a mistake. The first sign came as a sudden chill. Not a draft from the door or window, but a coldness that clung to my skin, sinking deep into my bones. I rubbed my arms, but the temperature drop was unnatural, sharp, as if someone had opened an invisible door to another world. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, pacing across the wooden floorboards above me. I froze, staring at the ceiling. The staff hadn't gone upstairs, and the sound was too heavy, too clear to be the building settling. My heartbeat quickened, and I told myself it was just another guest. But when I glanced around, every other table seemed equally uneasy, people glancing upward, their eyes wide. We had all heard it. My coffee sat untouched now, growing cold. That's when I felt it, a pressure around my neck, light at first, then tightening like the brush of a rope. My breath caught, and I instinctively clutched at my throat. The sensation faded as quickly as it came, leaving me gasping quietly, my skin prickling with gooseflesh. I tried to calm myself, convincing my mind it was imagination, suggestion, history seeping into nerves. But then I saw him. Just for a moment. Near the doorway, a tall shadow stood, long coat, broad shoulders, indistinct but solid enough to block the light. My chest constricted as I blinked, trying to focus, but the figure dissolved into the air, leaving nothing but the faint creak of the floorboards where it had stood. Fear settled into me fully then. Not the loud, panicked kind, but a silent terror, like being watched by something you couldn't confront. My legs shook as I stood, pushing my chair back too quickly. Its scrape echoed unnaturally loud in the hushed lounge. I whispered a thank you to the staff, my voice trembling, and headed for the door without finishing my drink. Outside, the damp Welsh air felt like a relief. I turned back once, staring at the ancient inn, its roofline jagged against the misty mountain backdrop. From the window of the lounge, I thought I saw movement, a pale flicker, like someone watching from inside. I left with my chest tight and my thoughts spinning. People say the Skirrid Mountain Inn is just a relic of the past, a pub steeped in grim history. But sitting in that coffee lounge, feeling the footsteps above, the whisper of the rope around my neck, and the shadow at the door, I knew better. The Skirrid doesn't just hold history. It remembers it. And if you stay long enough, it makes sure you feel it too. 5 The 10 Bells Café, Spitalfields, London. I've always been fascinated by places where history refuses to stay in the past, and the 10 Bells Café in Spitalfields is one of those names that carries a chill even before you step inside. Known for its links to Jack the Ripper's victims, the café has a reputation for being more than just a historic landmark. Locals whisper about shadows that move when no one's there, footsteps that echo in empty hallways, and the lingering presence of women who never made it home. I told myself it was just a story, until I went there myself. The day was grey, the kind of dull London afternoon where the air feels heavy with drizzle. The exterior of the 10 Bells looked deceptively ordinary, just another old building tucked into the busy life of Spitalfields. But the moment I entered, the atmosphere shifted. The smell of freshly ground coffee mingled with something older, something musty, like damp wood and age-old stone. The lighting was soft, warm enough to be inviting but dim enough to leave shadows stretching across the corners. The floorboards creaked beneath my shoes, and every sound seemed to linger a second longer than it should have. I ordered a cappuccino and sat near the window, my table facing the narrow stretch of Commercial Street outside. People walked past quickly, hurrying through the drizzle, but inside, time felt slower, almost suspended. I sipped my coffee, convincing myself that I was here for the history, not the hauntings. But my nerves betrayed me. My hands tapped against the cup, my ears straining for sounds I couldn't explain. The first came quickly, footsteps. Not the scatter of busy customers or staff, but slow, deliberate steps crossing the wooden floor behind me. I turned, expecting someone to walk past, but the space was empty. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I smiled awkwardly to myself, muttering that it was just an old building settling. Still, unease crept in. As I tried to settle back into my seat, a shadow moved along the wall near the stairwell. It was distinct, the outline of a person, but no one was there to cast it. My stomach tightened, and I found myself staring at the spot until the barista's voice behind the counter pulled me back. No one else seemed to have noticed. Then the temperature dropped. It was subtle at first, like a cool breeze had drifted through the room, but soon it sank into my bones. I wrapped my hands tighter around my cup, the warmth of the coffee my only anchor. That's when I heard it, soft, almost inaudible, a woman's whisper right at my ear. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone carried sorrow, like a plea. I froze, my chest tightening. I wanted to tell myself it was imagination, suggestion planted by stories I'd read, but the sound had been too real, too close. I dared not look beside me, certain I'd see someone, or something, leaning over my shoulder. When I finally found the courage to stand, my chair scraped across the floor, louder than it should have been in the hushed room. I tried to steady my breathing as I carried my cup back to the counter, but my hands shook. The barista gave me a knowing look, the kind that says, "You're not the first to feel it." Outside, the drizzle had turned to rain. I walked quickly down Commercial Street, glancing back once. The 10 Bells stood there, its windows glowing faintly against the gray sky. From one of them, I thought I saw the shape of a woman, pale, still, watching. I don't know if what I experienced was real or just the weight of history pressing down on me. But I do know this, the 10 Bells Café is more than coffee and history. It's a place where the past lingers in whispers, shadows, and footsteps, and once you felt it, you don't forget.